I slammed on my brakes so hard, my seatbelt nearly choked me. My own driveway, my own sanctuary, was blocked again. And not by some random delivery truck, or a visitor making a quick stop, no. It was the same silver SUV that had been haunting me for weeks. The license plate, the obnoxious pink steering wheel cover, and that faded love sticker on the back. I knew exactly who it belonged to. Brenda, the neighbor from hell. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles turning white as I tried to process what I was seeing. This wasn't just an inconvenience anymore. This was personal. The first time, I had let it slide, thinking maybe it was an honest mistake. The second time, I knocked on her door, and she had the audacity to say, "Oh, I'll move it when I'm done with my coffee." But this was the third time in a week, and I was done playing nice. I threw my car into park right in the middle of the street and got out, my footsteps heavy with frustration as I stormed to Brenda's front door. I pounded on it with enough force to make the windows rattle inside. I could hear the distant sound of a TV blaring some ridiculous reality show and the unmistakable clinking of a spoon against a bowl. She was eating, relaxing, without a care in the world, while her car sat in my driveway. After what felt like an eternity, the door swung open, and there she was, Brenda, in all her entitled glory. She stood there in her silk robe, a bowl of cereal in one hand, her phone in the other. She blinked at me as if I was some unexpected guest crashing her Sunday morning peace. "Can I help you?" she said, her voice dripping with fake politeness. "Yeah, you can move your car," I snapped, trying to keep my temper in check. Again, she sighed dramatically, taking an exaggerated bite of her cereal. "Oh, is it really that big of a deal? I was going to move it in, like, 20 minutes. I felt my eye twitch. "Brenda, I have been patient. I have been polite. But this is my driveway, not your personal parking lot." She rolled her eyes and leaned against the doorframe. "Oh, relax. It's not like you're using it right now." I took a deep breath, my fingers curling into fists at my sides. "That's not the point. You can't just park in someone's driveway because you feel like it. What if I needed to leave for an emergency?" She actually laughed. "Emergency? Please. Where do you even have to go in such a hurry?" Something inside me snapped. I turned on my heel and marched back to my car. If she wanted to play games, I'd show her exactly how serious I was. I maneuvered my car onto the edge of my driveway, blocking her SUV in completely. She wasn't going anywhere unless she came out and had a real conversation, like an adult. I stood back, arms crossed, watching her reaction unfold through the window. It took about 30 seconds for her to realize what I'd done. The front door burst open again, this time with Brenda beet red and furious. "What the hell are you doing?" she shrieked. I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, I was just going to move my car in, like, 20 minutes. Her face turned an even deeper shade of crimson. "You can't do this." "Why not?" I asked, mirroring her earlier tone. "It's not like you were using it." Her hands balled into fists. "Move your car, right now." "No." For the first time since I'd met Brenda, she looked genuinely speechless. She opened and closed her mouth, clearly trying to find an argument, but she had nothing. Instead, she stomped past me toward her SUV, yanked on the door handle, and then groaned when she realized she was completely blocked in. I didn't even try to hide my smirk. "Looks like you'll have to wait 20 minutes." She turned back to me, fire in her eyes. "I will call the police on you." I shrugged. "Go ahead. And when they get here, I'll be happy to show them the security footage of you trespassing on my property multiple times." Her face drained of color for a second before she quickly masked it with more anger. She turned on her heel and stomped back toward her house. "This isn't over," she hissed before slamming the door shut. I took a deep breath, feeling a small victory settle in my chest. But deep down, I knew Brenda wasn't the type to back down so easily. If this was the beginning of war, then I was ready. She had picked the wrong driveway to mess with. The next morning, I woke up feeling slightly smug, expecting to find Brenda banging on my door. But what I found instead sent my blood pressure skyrocketing. Not only had she parked in my driveway again, but this time she had left her car in the absolute worst position possible. The way she had maneuvered it made it impossible for me to get out unless I called a tow truck or drove straight through my front lawn. I stared at it, barely believing what I was seeing. She had doubled down. She was challenging me. "Oh, Brenda, you really shouldn't have done that." I didn't waste a second. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I never thought I'd need. To a? Yes, hello, I need a vehicle removed from my property. The man on the other end asked a few questions, and when I described the situation, he actually chuckled. "Sounds like you've got yourself a real troublemaker," he said. "You have no idea," I muttered. "How soon can you get here?" 15 minutes. Perfect. I stayed outside, arms crossed, waiting like a man about to watch the most satisfying movie of his life. Sure enough, 15 minutes later, the tow truck pulled up, and just as the driver stepped out, Brenda's front door swung open. "What is going on?" she screeched. I looked at her, then at the tow truck driver, then back at her. "Oh, you were going to move it in 20 minutes, right?" Her face twisted in a mix of rage and panic. "You can't do this." The tow truck driver simply raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, this car is illegally parked on private property. This gentleman called us, and he has every right to remove it." Brenda practically vibrated with fury. "You can't just take my car." "Well," I said, smirking, "you should have thought about that before using my driveway as your personal parking spot." The tow truck driver didn't hesitate. With the speed of someone who had clearly done this 1,000 times before, he hooked up Brenda's SUV to the truck. The moment she saw her car getting lifted, she lost it. "I will sue you!" she shrieked. I simply smiled, watching as her car was slowly pulled away from my property. "See you in court then." As the tow truck rumbled off with Brenda's precious SUV in tow, she stood frozen in shock. I turned around and walked back inside, already anticipating the absolute chaos that was about to unfold. This was far from over. The moment Brenda's SUV disappeared down the street, towed away like a trophy of justice, I felt a rare sense of victory. But I knew better than to think it was over. If I had learned anything about Brenda, it was that she didn't take loss well, and judging by the way she stood on her porch, arms crossed, face red with fury, I could already tell she was plotting her next move. I went back inside, trying to enjoy my morning coffee, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the storm was just beginning. Sure enough, not even an hour later, there was a knock on my door. It wasn't an angry pounding like before, but a slow, deliberate knock, the kind that made it clear the person on the other side thought they were in control. I sighed, set my mug down, and opened the door. There she was, now dressed in one of her floral blouses and high-waisted jeans, arms crossed so tight it looked like she was holding herself back from lunging at me. "You're going to pay for that," she said, her voice dripping with venom. I raised an eyebrow. "For what?" "Enforcing my property rights." She let out a laugh, but there was no humor in it. "You had my car towed, and you parked in my driveway after I warned you multiple times." She took a step closer. "You have no idea who you're messing with." I almost laughed at the click but I held back. "Brenda, I don't care who I'm messing with. I just want you to stop parking in my driveway." "Oh, you'll care soon enough." With that, she turned on her heel and marched back to her house. I should have left it alone. I should have gone back inside and ignored her threats. But curiosity got the better of me. I pulled out my phone and texted my next-door neighbor, Mark, who had lived here way longer than I had. "What's Brenda's deal? Has she always been like this?" Almost instantly, Mark replied, "Oh boy, you just stepped into a nightmare. I'll come over." 15 minutes later, Mark was sitting across from me in my living room, shaking his head. I was wondering when she'd finally mess with the wrong person. So, it's not just me? He let out a dry cough. Not even close. She's been pulling stunts like this for years. She used to park in front of my driveway too, but I have a motorcycle, so I could get around it. Then she started borrowing people's stuff: lawn chairs, garden hoses, even a rake once. She acts like everything in the neighborhood belongs to her. I stared at him, stunned. And nobody's done anything about it? Oh, people have tried. Some have confronted her, others have complained to the HOA, but nothing ever happens. She's got a weird way of playing the victim whenever she gets called out. Figures, I muttered. Mark leaned back. You should talk to Mrs. Peterson down the street. She's had it worse than anyone. Brenda actually called the cops on her once. For what? For supposedly stealing a package that was misdelivered to her house. The cops showed up, Mrs. Peterson showed them the delivery label with her name on it, and Brenda still insisted it was hers. Unbelievable. Mark nodded grimly. She's a professional nightmare. And now that you've embarrassed her, she's going to do everything she can to make your life miserable. That was not what I wanted to hear, but at least I knew what I was up against. The next day, I saw just how right Mark was. I woke up to find a note taped to my front door. At first, I thought it was from the HOA, but when I opened it, I realized it was a complaint filed against me. It read, "Your property has been a nuisance to the community. Unlawful actions, threats against neighbors, and disruption of peace have been noted. The HOA will be contacted." I almost laughed. Brenda had written it in her own handwriting, not even trying to make it look official. I crumpled it up and tossed it in the trash. If she thought I was going to take that seriously, she was delusional. By the afternoon, she had escalated. As I pulled into my driveway, I noticed something off about my front lawn. At first, I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but then I saw it. Brenda had scattered piles of dried leaves and trash across my grass. I knew for a fact it wasn't windy enough for them to have just ended up there naturally. I marched over to her house, rang her doorbell, and waited. She answered with the faintest look of innocence I had ever seen. "Oh, it's you." I gestured to my lawn. "Really?" She looked past me at the mess and shrugged. "Oh dear, looks like someone has a littering problem." I clenched my jaw. "Brenda, I don't have time for this." "You should really keep your yard clean," she said with a smirk. "The HOA is very strict about things like that." I exhaled sharply. "I'm done playing games with you. This is harassment." She laughed. "Harassment? Oh, honey, you haven't seen harassment yet." I walked away before I said something I'd regret. That night, I knew I had to take things to the next level. I couldn't let her keep escalating. If she wanted a war, she was going to get one. The next morning, I woke up to a brand new development. Brenda had put up signs all around the neighborhood. They read, "Beware of aggressive neighbor. Report any suspicious activity to the HOA." I ripped one down and examined it. There was no official stamp, no logo, nothing that indicated these were from the HOA, just Brenda's personal vendetta written in big, bold letters. I drove straight to the HOA office, ready to shut this down once and for all. The president, an older man named Tom, looked up when I entered. "Oh boy, let me guess, Brenda?" He sighed. "You're not the first. What did she do this time?" I tossed the sign onto his desk. "She put these up all over the neighborhood." Tom rubbed his temples. "I swear, every few months it's something new with her." "So, what are you going to do about it?" He sighed. "I'll have a talk with her." I scoffed. "A talk?" Tom looked at me apologetically. "Legally, we can do much unless she violates an official rule. We fine her before, but she just pays it and keeps doing what she wants." I leaned forward. "So you're telling me she can keep harassing people, and there's nothing anyone can do unless you take legal action?" "Pretty much," Tom admitted with a weary sigh. I left the office feeling frustrated but more determined than ever. Brenda had been getting away with this for too long, and if the HOA wasn't going to stop her, I would. That night, I set up security cameras all around my property. If she so much as set foot on my driveway, I'd have video proof. And if she wanted to keep playing dirty, well, two could play that game. The next morning, my phone pinged with an alert, motion detected. I opened the app, and there she was, creeping around my driveway, holding something in her hand. I hit record. Brenda had just made a big mistake. The moment I saw Brenda sneaking around my driveway on the security camera footage, I knew I had her. She was holding a small container, and as she crouched down near my car, I could see her sprinkling something along the edge of my driveway. My stomach twisted with a mix of anger and amusement. Was she seriously pulling some kind of middle school prank? I zoomed in on the footage, trying to get a clearer look. It looked like birdseed, no, cat food. She was scattering cat food all over my driveway. I exhaled through my nose, already predicting what was going to happen next. She was trying to attract stray animals to make my property look dirty, unkempt, or worse, infested. This was a new level of petty, even for her. I sat back in my chair, watching as she finished her little sabotage job and scurried back to her house, looking smug as ever. Part of me wanted to march right over and confront her, but that's what she wanted. She wanted a reaction. Instead, I took a deep breath, picked up my phone, and made a call. "Hey, Mark, you still got that pressure washer?" Within the hour, I was outside, blasting away every last bit of her little stunt. If she thought a few stray animals or a mess was going to make me break, she was sorely mistaken. The best part? I had every second of her nonsense recorded. Later that day, I sent her a text with a single screenshot of the footage in a message: "Try again." No threats, no long paragraphs, just 2 words and solid proof that I wasn't playing games. Not even 10 minutes later, she stormed out of her house, arms flailing like an enraged bird, and stomped over to my driveway. "You're spying on me now?" she screeched. I leaned against my car, arms crossed. "Spying? No. Protecting my property? Absolutely." She pointed a shaking finger at me. "You're obsessed with me." I actually laughed at that. "Brenda, you keep parking in my driveway, throwing trash on my lawn, and now you're feeding stray animals on my property. If anything, you're obsessed with me." Her face turned a deep shade of red, and for a second, I thought she might actually explode. "This is harassment." "Funny," I said, tilting my head. "That's exactly what I was thinking about you." Her mouth opened and closed, searching for a response. Then she did what Brendas do best, played the victim. She clutched her chest dramatically. "I'm feeling really unsafe right now." I gestured toward my security cameras. "Good thing everything's recorded then." She let out a frustrated growl and stomped back to her house, slamming the door so hard that a decorative wreath fell off. I sighed, rubbing my temples. This was turning into a full-time job. That night, I decided it was time to get serious. If Brenda wanted a war, I was going to fight back strategically. I spent hours researching property laws, HOA rules, and legal loopholes. That's when I found the perfect way to hit her where it hurt. The next morning, I woke up early and made another call. This time to a towing company. "Hey, I need a car removed from my driveway." The dispatcher on the other end asked for the details, and I explained the situation. "This is the 3rd time she's done this. I have security footage, and she's been warned." "Got it," the guy said. "We'll send someone over within the hour." I could hardly contain my excitement. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat on my porch, waiting for the show to begin. Right on time, the tow truck pulled up. The driver, a big guy with a beard, got out and gave me a nod. "That the one?" he asked, pointing at Brenda's SUV, once again parked smack dab in my driveway. "That's the one." Just as he started hooking it up, Brenda's front door flew open. She came sprinting out in a complete frenzy. "Stop! Stop! You can't do that!" The tow truck driver barely spared her a glance. "Ma'am, this vehicle is illegally parked on private property. The owner called it in." Brenda turned to me, eyes wild. "You can't keep doing this to me." I took a sip of my coffee, savoring the moment. "Actually, I can." She ran up to her car, gripping the door handle as if she could somehow will it to stay put. "I will call the police." The tow truck driver shrugged. "Go ahead. They'll just tell you the same thing." Her face twisted in rage, and she whipped out her phone. I watched, amused, as she dialed 911 right there in the middle of the street. "Yes, I need to report a crime. My car is being stolen." I almost choked on my coffee. Even the tow truck driver let out a low chuckle. A few minutes later, a police cruiser pulled up, lights flashing but siren off. A cop stepped out, looking mildly irritated as he approached. "What's the issue here?" Brenda practically lunged at him. "He's having my car towed for no reason." The officer glanced at me. "You the homeowner?" I nodded. "Yes, sir. I've got security footage showing her parking in my driveway multiple times after being warned. She doesn't live here, and she's trespassing." The cop sighed and looked at Brenda. "Ma'am, is this true?" She scoffed. "It's just a driveway." "He's being completely unreasonable." The cop pulled out a notepad. "Do you live on this property?" Brenda hesitated, realizing where this was going. "Well, no, but..." "Then you're trespassing," the cop said simply. "You can't park on someone else's property without permission." Brenda's jaw dropped. "This is ridiculous." "It's just for a little while." The cop turned to me. "You want to press trespassing charges?" I thought about it for a second. As tempting as it was, I shook my head. "Not yet. I just want her to stop." Brenda let out an exasperated scream. "This isn't over." The cop gave her a bored look. "If you park here again, it will be." She shot me one last glare before storming off. As the tow truck driver finished hooking up her SUV, the moment the truck pulled away, I let out a deep breath. I had won this round, but I knew Brenda wasn't going to back down that easily. She was going to come back with something even worse. Later that night, as I was winding down, I heard something strange outside. I checked my cameras, and sure enough, there she was, sneaking around my property again. This time she was carrying something small in her hands. I zoomed in, and my stomach dropped. She was holding a screwdriver. I immediately ran to my door, yanked it open, and flipped on the porch light. "Hey!" She froze like a deer caught in headlights. And just like that, I knew this was far from over. The moment I flipped on the porch light and yelled, Brenda froze for a split second. She just stood there, like a kid caught sneaking into the cookie jar. But unlike a guilty child who might apologize, she did what Brendas do best, she tried to talk her way out of it. "Oh, I was just, checking something," she stammered, hiding the screwdriver behind her back. I stepped forward, crossing my arms. "Checking what exactly?" "My property line with a screwdriver." Her eyes darted around, looking for an escape. "Well, I thought I saw something loose on your mailbox." I was being a good neighbor. I glanced over at my mailbox, which was in perfect condition. "Right. And that explains why you were sneaking around my driveway, near my car?" She let out a nervous laugh. "You're being paranoid." I reached for my phone. "Want to see the footage?" "Because I have it all recorded." Her expression shifted from nervous to furious in an instant. "You can just spy on people all the time. It's an invasion of privacy." I tilted my head. "On my property? You do realize security cameras are legal, right?" She clenched her fists. "This is harassment. You're making me feel unsafe in my own neighborhood." I scoffed. "You're on my property in the middle of the night with a screwdriver." If anyone should feel unsafe, it's me." She opened her mouth to argue, but I held up a hand. "I'm done with this. If I catch you near my house again, I'm calling the police." For a second, I thought she was going to throw a full-blown tantrum right there on my lawn, but instead, she turned on her heel and stomped back to her house, muttering under her breath. I watched her go, making sure she actually went inside before I locked up for the night. The next morning, I checked my car first thing. Nothing seemed out of place, but I still took pictures, just in case she had done something I didn't notice right away. I wasn't about to let her pull some sneaky damage and then deny it later. Just when I thought things might settle down, I got a letter in the mail. At first, I assumed it was another fake complaint from Brenda, but when I opened it, I realized this one was official. It was from the HOA. The letter stated that multiple complaints had been filed against me for being a disruptive and aggressive neighbor. According to the complaint, I had been verbally attacking residents, threatening property damage, and creating an uncomfortable living environment. I read it twice, then let out a short laugh. Of course. Brenda had lost the battle, so now she was trying to win the war with paperwork. I walked over to my neighbor Mark's house and knocked. When he opened the door, he gave me a knowing look. "Brenda?" I held up the letter. "Guess who's trying to get me in trouble with the HOA?" He took the paper, read it, and rolled his eyes. "She's done this before. She did it to the Johnsons 2 years ago when they called her out for stealing the garden decorations." "What happened?" "The HOA investigated, realized she was lying, and ignored it. But it took weeks." I sighed. "So now I have to deal with this nonsense." Mark crossed his arms. "Or you can fight back." That gave me an idea. If Brenda wanted to use the HOA as a weapon, I was going to turn the tables. The next day, I filed my own complaint. Except mine included security footage, timestamps, and a detailed report of everything she had done. I even attached statements from neighbors who had also been harassed by her. A week later, the HOA sent another letter. This one was addressed to Brenda. The letter stated that an investigation was being conducted into her behavior and that if the complaints were found to be valid, she could face fines or other penalties. The moment she got the letter, I knew. She showed up at my door again, this time red-faced and shaking with rage. "You think you're so smart?" she spat. I leaned against the doorframe. "Not smart, just tired of your nonsense." She pointed a finger in my face. "You have no idea what you've done." I shrugged. "Seems like I've made the HOA actually pay attention to your behavior for once." She glared at me like she wanted to throw something. "This isn't over." I smiled. "You keep saying that, but you just keep losing." Her face twisted in fury, but she had nothing left to say. She stormed off, and for the first time in weeks, I actually felt like I was winning. That night, I got another security alert on my phone. I checked the camera feed, expecting to see Brenda lurking around again, but this time it was different. Her SUV was parked in my driveway again. I clenched my jaw. She had done it again. But this time, I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my phone and called the tow truck immediately. By the time the driver arrived, Brenda still hadn't come outside. Maybe she thought I wouldn't actually do it. Maybe she was testing me. Either way, she was about to get a rude awakening. As the tow truck started hooking up her car, her front door flew open. "No. Stop. Stop right now." The tow truck driver barely acknowledged her as he continued working. She ran straight to me. "You can't do this." I crossed my arms. "I warned you. I was just parked for a second." "Doesn't matter." She turned to the tow truck driver. "If you take my car, I'll sue you." The driver snorted. "Lady, I've been sued 3 times this year." "Go ahead." Brenda let out a frustrated scream, but she was completely powerless as her SUV was pulled away for the second time. She collapsed onto her front steps, looking utterly defeated. I almost felt bad. Almost. The next morning, something incredible happened. The HOA sent out a public notice that Brenda had been fined for multiple violations, including harassment, unauthorized parking, and disorderly conduct. And just like that, the tides had turned. The neighbors who had been silent for so long started talking. People shared their own stories of Brenda's entitled behavior. Some even admitted they had wanted to call her out before but were too afraid of her retaliation. By the end of the week, Brenda was the neighborhood villain, and I was no longer her only target. She had finally pushed too far, and this time, there was no coming back. The fallout from Brenda's latest stunt spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. Word traveled fast, and soon almost everyone knew what had happened. The once intimidating woman who had bullied her way through the community for years was now the subject of endless gossip. People whispered about her at the mailbox, shook their heads when they passed her house, and openly laughed whenever they saw her stomping around in a rage. For the first time, she wasn't the one in control. I could see the shift in her demeanor almost immediately. The smug arrogance she usually carried was gone, replaced by barely contained anger and desperation. Every time she walked outside, she scanned the neighborhood like she was looking for someone to blame. She avoided eye contact with me completely, but I caught her glaring from her window more times than I could count. Then, like clockwork, she tried to fight back. One afternoon, I got home from work to find a police car parked in front of my house. My stomach dropped, but I forced myself to stay calm as I pulled into the driveway. As soon as I stepped out, a uniformed officer approached me. "Are you John?" he asked, flipping through his notepad. I nodded. "Yeah, what's going on?" He sighed, already looking tired. "We got a complaint from a resident about harassment and destruction of property." I blinked. "What?" He gestured toward Brenda's house. "Your neighbor claims you've been vandalizing her property and threatening her." I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. "Officer, I have security cameras all over my house. If I had been anywhere near her property, I'd have proof of it." He nodded, already looking like he expected that answer. "Mind if I take a look?" I led him inside, pulled up my security footage, and played back the last several nights. Not only did it prove I hadn't gone near Brenda's house, but it also showed her sneaking around my driveway again, clearly trying to mess with my property. The officer watched for a few minutes before shaking his head. "Yeah, this isn't looking good for her." I crossed my arms. "So what happens now?" He let out a sigh. "Honestly, probably nothing. I can file a report, but unless she actually does something criminal, this is just a civil dispute. You could take her to small claims court if she damages anything, but beyond that, it's just a headache." I ran a hand through my hair, already exhausted. "So basically, she can keep making stuff up, and I just have to deal with it?" "For now," he admitted, "but if she keeps making false reports, she could face legal consequences." I exhaled. "So I just have to wait until she messes up again?" He gave me a sympathetic look. "Pretty much." I walked him out, watching as he knocked on Brenda's door. She opened it just enough to peek through, and I could practically feel the heat of her glare from across the street. The conversation was brief. I couldn't hear what was being said, but by the way her face twisted in frustration, I knew it wasn't going the way she wanted. The officer handed her a paper, probably the filed report, and walked back to his car without another word. The moment he drove off, she slammed her door so hard it rattled the windows. Later that night, Mark stopped by, holding a couple of beers. "Heard about the cops showing up?" "She really tried it, huh?" I shook my head, taking the drink. "She's getting desperate." Mark sat down on my porch, cracking open his beer. "You know what this means, right?" I took a sip, already knowing where he was going with this. "She's not done." He nodded grimly. "People like her don't back down. Not until they've completely lost." We sat in silence for a few minutes, watching the neighborhood settle into its usual quiet. And then, just when I thought I might get a break, Brenda pulled her next move. The very next morning, I woke up to something truly unbelievable. A huge for sale sign was planted in her front yard. At first, I thought it was a prank. Maybe someone in the neighborhood had done it as a joke. But then I saw Brenda outside, furiously talking to a real estate agent. She was actually selling her house. I blinked at the sight, trying to process it. After all the chaos, after all the drama, after all the petty battles, was she really giving up? Later that day, Mark came over again, holding up his phone. "You're not going to believe this." He turned the screen towards me, showing a neighborhood forum post. Brenda had written a long, dramatic message about how she was being forced out by hostile neighbors who had ganged up on her. She painted herself as a victim, talking about how she never felt safe and couldn't live in such a toxic environment. I scrolled through the comments, expecting sympathy, but instead, I found the complete opposite. People were celebrating. Comment after comment was filled with neighbors openly expressing their relief. "About time. Good riddance. Maybe now I can park in front of my own house without worrying about getting a complaint. Does this mean we can have a block party again?" The entire neighborhood was thrilled she was leaving. For the next few days, Brenda stayed inside, probably stewing over the fact that nobody was sad to see her go. Moving trucks came and went, slowly stripping her house of everything she had. She didn't look at anyone, didn't acknowledge the people who had lived next to her for years. She just packed up and disappeared. And then, just like that, she was gone. It was almost eerie at first. The neighborhood felt lighter, like someone had lifted a heavy weight off of it. People started chatting more, kids played outside without their parents nervously glancing at Brenda's house, and for the first time since I moved in, I felt a real sense of community. A week after she left, a few of us gathered for a small barbecue, something that had apparently been a tradition before Brenda ruined it. Mark raised his drink, grinning. "To a car-free neighborhood." Everyone cheered. I sat back, watching as people laughed and shared stories, relieved that the nightmare was finally over. But just as I was starting to truly relax, I got a notification on my phone. An email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line made my stomach drop: "You may have won this round, but I'll be back." I stared at the message, my mind racing. Was it real? A prank? I looked around at the peaceful neighborhood, at the people who were finally enjoying themselves again, and then, with a slow exhale, I deleted the email. Brenda was gone, and I wasn't going to waste another second worrying about her. The neighborhood felt like a completely different place after Brenda was gone. It was as if a dark cloud had finally lifted, and for the first time, people actually enjoyed living here. The tension that had settled into the community for years vanished almost overnight. Neighbors who once kept to themselves were now out on their porches, chatting with each other. Kids rode their bikes freely without their parents watching over them like hawks, afraid of another ridiculous complaint. Even small things like garbage cans left out for an extra day or cars parked slightly over the curb were no longer met with passive-aggressive notes or HOA threats. It was peaceful, and I couldn't believe how much of a difference one person's absence could make. Mark came over one evening, plopping down on my porch chair with a satisfied sigh. "Feels good, doesn't it?" he said, stretching his legs out. I nodded, sipping my drink. "It's almost too quiet." He snorted. "You miss the chaos?" "Not even a little." We both laughed, watching as another family moved into Brenda's old house. The moving trucks had arrived that morning, and from what little I had seen, the new owners looked nothing like their predecessor. A young couple with two small kids, smiling and excited to settle into their new home. They had already waved at several neighbors, which was more friendliness in one afternoon than Brenda had shown in years. "I talked to the new guy," Mark said, watching them unload boxes. "Seems nice. Works from home, wife's a teacher." I nodded. "So, normal people." "Yeah," Mark chuckled. "No insane driveway wars, no fake HOA complaints, No bizarre acts of revenge. I let out a breath. Finally. For the next few days, the transition continued. The new family settled in, and it was like Brenda had never even existed. The neighborhood carried on, happier than ever. But no matter how much I tried to forget about her, there was still a part of me that couldn't shake the email she had sent before leaving. I had deleted it, choosing to focus on the present rather than whatever ridiculous threat she thought she was making, but it still lingered in the back of my mind. Was she serious? Was she really planning on coming back? Or was it just an empty attempt to scare me? Weeks passed, and nothing happened. No mysterious cars parked on the street, no unexpected letters in my mailbox, no bizarre disturbances in the night. Brenda was truly gone. The relief was real this time, and for the first time since moving in, I could fully enjoy my home without looking over my shoulder. Then one evening, I received an unexpected visitor. It was late, just after sunset, when I heard the knock on my door. At first, I assumed it was Mark or another neighbor stopping by, but when I opened it, I found an unfamiliar woman standing on my porch. She looked to be in her mid-40s, with sharp eyes and a confident posture. She wasn't smiling, but she didn't seem hostile either. "Can I help you?" I asked, studying her carefully. She folded her arms. "You're the guy who got Brenda out, aren't you?" I blinked at her bluntness. Yeah, I guess you could say that." A small smirk tugged at her lips. "Good. It's about time someone did." I frowned. "You knew her?" She nodded. "Unfortunately. I used to live next to her years ago, back when she was in her old neighborhood before she moved here." I stared at her, processing the information. "Wait, she's done this before?" "Oh, many times," the woman said, shaking her head. "Brenda has a habit of making herself unwelcome. She moves into a nice neighborhood, starts causing problems, pushes people's patience until they snap, and then plays the victim when they fight back. She did it where I lived, and when things got bad enough, she left, packed up, and moved, just like she did here." A chill ran through me. "So, she really could come back?" The woman shrugged. "I doubt it. She likes to be in control, and right now, she has no power here. But she'll pop up somewhere else. Another neighborhood, another fresh start, and she'll do the same thing all over again." I exhaled, shaking my head. "Unbelievable." She chuckled. "You got off easy. She once tried to sue my old neighborhood's HOA, costing them thousands in legal fees before she finally gave up." I whistled. "And I thought I had it bad." She smiled. "Just a warning. If you ever hear about a woman named Brenda moving into a new place and stirring up trouble, you'll know what's coming." I nodded. "I'll keep that in mind." She gave me a knowing look before turning to leave. As she walked down my driveway, I couldn't help but feel both relieved and uneasy at the same time. Brenda was gone, but she wasn't finished. She never would be. She was just moving on to her next target. For a few weeks, I kept expecting something to happen: a sudden legal letter, a mysterious complaint, maybe even another email. But nothing came. Brenda was truly out of my life, and this time it seemed permanent. One day, as I was working in my front yard, the new neighbor, Jason, walked over with a friendly wave. "Hey John, got a second?" I wiped my hands on my jeans. "Yeah, what's up?" He leaned against the fence. "I just wanted to say thanks. I've been hearing stories from the neighbors about the nightmare before we moved in. I left." "So they told you about Brenda?" He nodded. "Oh yeah. Sounded like a horror movie." "You really went through all that?" "Every bit of it." He let out a low whistle. "Man, I owe you a drink or something. My wife and I are just glad we moved in after all that drama was over." I grinned. "Trust me, we all are." He clapped a hand on my shoulder. "Well, if you ever need anything, let me know. I plan on being a much better neighbor than she was." I smiled. "I appreciate that." As he walked back to his house, I took a deep breath and looked around. The street was quiet, peaceful. No tension, no drama, no lingering feeling of being watched. For the first time, my home actually felt like home. That night, I sat on my porch, enjoying the cool air and the sound of crickets in the distance. I thought about everything that had happened, all the ridiculous battles, all the stress, all the absurdity that had come with Brenda's presence. It had felt like a never-ending war, but in the end, I had won. I glanced at my phone, scrolling through my emails one last time. I hesitated before searching for her name. Nothing. No new messages, no surprises, just silence. I deleted her old email and leaned back in my chair, closing my eyes. Brenda was gone, and this time, she wasn't coming back. For the first time since moving into this neighborhood, I finally had what I wanted, peace. Valuable lesson: this story highlights the importance of standing up for yourself and your boundaries, even when faced with difficult and entitled individuals. While it's always best to try and resolve conflicts peacefully, there are times when you need to be firm and take appropriate action to protect your well-being and property. Remember to document everything, know your rights, and don't be afraid to seek help from authorities or community resources when necessary. What are your thoughts on this neighborly dispute? Have you ever dealt with a similar situation? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more engaging content.